The training hall on Kepler 7 station stretched wider than any building Katie Morrison had ever seen back on Earth. She stood in formation with 40 other cadets, representing 12 different species from across the galaxy. 3 months into the Galactic Combat Academy program, and she still felt a small thrill every morning when she entered this massive space. Instructor Velther moved across the training floor with an ease that belied his size. The Kryn stood nearly 8 feet tall, his blue-scaled skin reflecting the overhead lights. What made him truly impressive were his 4 arms, each moving with perfect independence as he demonstrated combat techniques. He had been teaching blade combat for over 300 years. Again, Velther called out, his voice carrying across the hall without needing amplification. Third sequence. Focus on your footwork. Katie moved through the practice forms with her training blade, a weapon that hummed softly as it cut through the air. The energy weapon was set to training mode, which meant it would deliver a sharp sting rather than actually cutting through flesh. She had earned more than a few welts during her first month here. Next to her, Ryan Cooper grunted as he completed his sequence. He was another human cadet, originally from the North American territories like Katie. They had bonded quickly, being 2 of only 7 humans in their class. Looking sharp, Morrison, Ryan said quietly between exercises. You too, Katie replied, though she kept her eyes forward. Velther had excellent hearing. The instructor suddenly stopped the class. Weapons down. Attention forward. 40 cadets immediately complied, standing at rest with their training blades held loosely at their sides. Katie felt her heartbeat slow as she waited. Velther reached to his equipment belt and drew 2 blades simultaneously. Then his lower set of arms drew 2 more. 4 weapons, 4 hands, each blade humming at a slightly different frequency. Today I will demonstrate advanced technique, Velther announced. What you are about to see requires neural coordination that takes decades to develop. What followed was the most beautiful display of combat Katie had ever witnessed. Velther moved like liquid metal, his 4 blades working in perfect harmony. 2 blades would strike high while the other 2 defended low. He could attack 3 different targets simultaneously while using his 4th blade to parry. The weapons seemed to flow around his body in patterns that defied normal combat logic. The demonstration lasted perhaps 3 minutes, but Katie felt like she could have watched for hours. When Velther finally stopped, she realized she had been holding her breath. This is multi-weapon combat, Velther said, not even breathing hard despite the intense display. In Kryn culture, we begin learning this at age 5. Most of us achieve basic proficiency by age 50. A cadet from the hexapod species raised one of her 6 arms. Instructor, can other species learn this? Some can, Velther replied. The hexapods have 6 limbs. The Triskelions have 3. Species with multiple arms can develop multi-weapon techniques suited to their physiology. He paused, his dark eyes scanning the class. However, there is one absolute truth you must understand. No species with only 2 arms has ever successfully dual-wielded in actual combat. Katie felt something stir in her chest at those words. No species, ever. It sounded like a challenge. But Instructor, another cadet spoke up. What about carrying 2 weapons for backup? Carrying is not wielding, Velther said firmly. I am speaking of active combat with 2 weapons simultaneously. The neural pathways required simply do not exist in bilateral species. Your brains evolved with hemisphere specialization. One side becomes dominant. You cannot achieve the independent coordination needed for true dual-wielding. Ryan shifted slightly next to Katie. She knew what he was thinking because she was thinking the same thing. Humans had used 2 weapons before. She had read about ancient sword fighters who used a blade in each hand. There were combat styles from old Earth that specifically trained for dual weapons, but she said nothing. Not yet. The class continued with standard drills. Kitty performed well as always, earning a small nod of approval from Velther when she completed a particularly difficult sequence. By the time training ended 3 hours later, she was exhausted and drenched in sweat. "You had that look," Ryan said as they walked toward the cadet quarters. "What look?" "The look you get when someone tells you something is impossible." Ryan grinned. "I've seen that look before, Morrison. It usually means you are about to do something that will either get you a medal or get you expelled." Katie smiled but did not confirm or deny. They passed through the main corridor of the station, where huge windows showed the stars beyond. Somewhere out there was Earth, her home world, a planet that had produced countless warriors throughout its violent history. That night, Katie could not sleep. She kept thinking about Velther's demonstration. She kept hearing his words. No species with only 2 arms has ever successfully dual-wielded in actual combat. She got out of her bunk and accessed the station's historical database through her personal terminal. For 2 hours, she searched through combat records from 100 different species. Velther was technically correct. There were no official records of any 2-armed species successfully using dual weapons in real battle conditions. But then Katie searched Earth's own history. She found references to Miyamoto Musashi, a human swordsman who had developed a 2-sword style over 400 years ago. She found records of Filipino Kali fighters who wielded 2 sticks with deadly precision. She discovered medieval European techniques that combined sword and dagger. None of these made it into the galactic records because they happened before humans joined the wider galaxy. They were ancient primitive techniques from a less advanced time, or were they? Katie looked at her own hands. 2 hands, 2 arms, 1 brain that supposedly could not coordinate them independently for combat. She thought about human pianists who could play different melodies with each hand simultaneously. She thought about drummers who maintained completely different rhythms with their hands and feet. She thought about surgeons who performed delicate operations requiring both hands to work in perfect coordination, but with different tasks. Maybe Velther's absolute statement was not as absolute as he thought. The next morning, Katie requested a private meeting with the instructor. She submitted the request through official channels and then waited. Part of her expected him to refuse. Part of her hoped he would say yes. 3 hours later, she received her answer. Instructor Velther would see her in private training, room 7, after evening meal. Katie spent the rest of the day distracted. She made mistakes in her tactical studies class. She nearly burned herself in the engineering workshop. Ryan kept giving her concerned looks. "Are you going to tell me what you are planning?" he finally asked over lunch. Katie looked at her friend. "I am going to ask Velther to teach me dual wielding." Ryan stopped eating. "Katie, he just said yesterday that it is impossible for species like us. He said no species has ever done it. That is not the same as saying it cannot be done." "That is exactly what that means." "No," Katie said firmly. "That means no one has done it yet." Ryan shook his head but smiled. "Medal or expulsion. I am calling it now." When evening came, Katie made her way to training room 7. Her heart pounded as she pressed the door chime. The door slid open, and Velther's voice called from within. "Enter, Cadet Morrison." Katie stepped inside, and the door closed behind her. The private training room was smaller than the main hall, but still spacious. Velther stood in the center, his 4 arms crossed in a way that looked almost casual on him. "You wish to learn dual wielding," he said. It was not a question. Katie stood straight. "Yes, instructor." "I do." Velther's expression was unreadable. "Tell me why I should waste both our time teaching you something your species cannot do." Katie took a breath. This was her one chance. Because maybe we have not tried hard enough yet. The instructor's eyes narrowed slightly. And Katie knew that her life at the academy was about to get much more interesting. Velther circled Katie slowly, his forearms still crossed. The silence in the training room felt heavy. Katie kept her posture straight, her eyes forward, waiting. "You researched last night," Velther finally said. "I can access student terminal logs." "You looked through historical combat records." "Yes, instructor." "And what did you find?" Katie chose her words carefully. "I found that you were correct. No bilateral species has official records of successful dual wielding in combat. Yet, you still stand here, asking me to teach you." Velther stopped in front of her. "That suggests you believe you know something I do not." "Not exactly, instructor. But I found records from Earth. Before we joined the galactic community, humans did fight with two weapons. There are documented styles and techniques. Primitive weapons. Crude metal blades." Velther's tone was not dismissive, but factual. "That is not the same as modern energy weapons requiring split-second timing and power regulation." "No, instructor." "But it proves that human brains can coordinate two weapons." Velther made a sound that might have been approval or skepticism. Katie could not tell which. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a bench along the wall. He sat across from her, his large frame making the furniture look small. "I will explain why this cannot work," Velther began. "Not to discourage you, but because you deserve to understand the reality. Do you know how neural pathways develop?" "Basic understanding, instructor." "The brain creates connections based on repeated actions." "Correct." "Now, in species like yours and most other bilateral forms, the brain divides labor between hemispheres. Your left hemisphere typically controls your right side. Your right hemisphere controls your left side. Over millions of years of evolution, one hemisphere becomes dominant for complex motor tasks." Katie nodded, following along. "This means one hand becomes your primary tool. The other becomes support. When you write, you use one hand. When you throw, you use one hand. When you hold a weapon, you naturally prefer one hand." "Yes, yes, instructor. I am right-hand dominant." "Exactly. Now, some individuals can train their non-dominant hand to perform tasks. You can learn to write with your left hand. But here is the crucial point." Velther leaned forward. "You cannot make both hands equally dominant for complex tasks simultaneously. The brain must choose which hand receives primary focus in any given moment." "What about humans who play musical instruments?" Katie asked. "Pianists use both hands to play different notes at the same time." "A good question. But musical performance is different from combat. In music, the patterns are learned and repeated. The brain can memorize sequences. In combat, you must react to unpredictable threats. You must make split-second decisions while maintaining awareness of two separate weapons with different positions, angles, and energy outputs." Katie felt her hope beginning to fade, but she pushed back. "Instructor, with respect, how do we know it cannot be done if no one has seriously tried?" Velther stood a walk to the equipment locker. He returned with two training blades, setting them on the bench between them. "Many have tried, Cadet Morrison. Over the 300 years I have taught, I have had 17 students from bilateral species request this training. All eventually accepted the limitation. What happened when they tried? Neural fatigue, confusion, decreased performance with both weapons compared to single weapon use. The brain becomes overloaded trying to process two separate combat streams simultaneously." Velther picked up one blade. "This weapon requires constant micro-adjustments. Power flow, angle, distance, timing. Your conscious mind cannot track all of this. It must become instinctive. Now multiply that by 2, with each weapon in a different position, facing different threats. Katie stared at the training blades. So it is impossible. I did not say impossible. I said it has never been successfully achieved. Velthera's expression softened slightly. There is a difference. Before Katie could respond, the training room door chimed. Velther called permission to enter. A tall, slender figure entered, her skin a pale blue that marked her as Altarian. Instructor Velther, the newcomer said with a slight bow. You requested my presence? Yes. Cadet Morrison, this is Dr. Lyra Chun. She is our station. Medical officer and specializes in neurology. Katie stood and offered a respectful nod. Dr. Chun returned it with a friendly smile. The instructor told me about your interest in dual wielding, Dr. Chun said. He asked me to explain the physiological challenges. More people telling me it cannot be done, Katie said, trying to keep the frustration from her voice. Actually, Dr. Chun said, pulling out a small scanning device, I am here to see if you might be different. May I scan you? Katie glanced at Velther, who nodded. Please. Dr. Chun moved the scanner around Katie's head, the device humming softly. She studied the readout on her handheld display, her expression thoughtful. After several minutes, she lowered the scanner. Interesting, Dr. Chen murmured. Very interesting indeed. What did you find? Velther asked. Cadet Morrison shows unusually balanced hemisphere development. A corpus callosum, the structure that connects the brain's two halves, is more robust than typical for humans. She also has elevated neural plasticity markers. In simple terms? Katie asked. Dr. Chun smiled. In simple terms, your brain is better at coordinating both sides of your body than most people. Not extraordinarily so, but measurably above average. Additionally, your brain appears highly adaptable, capable of forming new neural pathways more easily than normal. Katie felt hope surge again. Does that mean I could learn dual wielding? It means you have better physical capability than most, Dr. Chun said carefully. But Instructor Velther is correct about the challenges. Even with your advantages, the neural load would be severe. You would need to train far harder than any other student. The mental fatigue would be intense. Velther stood silent, his forearms now hanging loose at his sides. Katie could tell he was thinking. I am willing to work hard, Katie said. Harder than anyone else if necessary. Hard work alone is not enough, Velther replied. But Dr. Chun's findings are intriguing. He picked up both training blades and held them out to Katie. Take them. Katie grasped both handles, one in each hand. They felt awkward, unbalanced. She was used to holding a single weapon. Activate them, Velther instructed. Katie pressed the activation studs. Both blades hummed to life, glowing with soft blue energy. Now, strike the target dummy on your left with your left blade while simultaneously blocking an imaginary strike from your right with your right blade. Katie tried. She really did. But her left strike was slow and weak, while her right blade moved too far, overcompensating. She felt clumsy and uncoordinated. Again, Velther said. She tried 5 more times. Each attempt was worse than the last. Katie felt frustration building. She could feel her brain trying to focus on both hands at once and failing. Enough, Velther said. Katie deactivated the blades, breathing harder than such simple movements should have required. You see the problem now, Velther said. It was not a question. Yes, instructor. Katie handed back the weapons, feeling defeated. Velther took the blades but did not put them away. However, Dr. Chun's findings suggest possibility exists. Small possibility, but possibility nonetheless. Katie looked up sharply. Instructor, I will make you an offer, Cadet Morrison. 1 week, You may train on your own time and dual wielding. At the end of 1 week, I will test you. If you can achieve 75% efficiency compared to your single blade performance, I will consider formal training. If you cannot, you will never raise this topic again. Agreed? 75% efficiency was high. Very high. Katie knew her current dual blade performance was probably below 30%. But Velther was offering her a chance. Maybe the only chance she would get. Agreed, Instructor. You may use Training Room 9 during off hours. I will authorize your access. Velther handed her both training blades. These are yours for the week. Do not damage them. Katie took the weapons carefully. Thank you, Instructor. Do not thank me yet. You have 7 days to accomplish what 17 others could not. I do not expect you to succeed, but I respect your determination enough to let you try. As Katie left the training room carrying both blades, Dr. Chun walked beside her. He's hard on students, the doctor said quietly. But fair. If anyone can do this, your neural profile suggests you have the best chance I have seen. But you still think I will probably fail. Dr. Chun smiled sadly. I think probability is against you. But humans seem to specialize in defying probability. Good luck, Cadet Morrison. Katie made her way back to the cadet quarters. Word had already spread somehow. Other cadets watched her carry the 2 training blades. Some looked curious. Others looked skeptical. A few alien cadets actually laughed. Ryan met her at the door to their shared quarters. So, I have 1 week. 75% efficiency, or I give up forever. Ryan whistled low. That is brutal. Your single blade efficiency is what, 89%? 91 as of last evaluation. So you need to reach about 68% with 2 blades. Katie, that is a massive jump. I know. Katie set the blades on her bunk. But I have to try. Ryan looked at the weapons, then at his friend. What do you need from me? Help me train. Run simulations. Spar with me. I cannot do this alone. Then you will not be alone. Ryan grinned. Day 1 began at 04:00 hours. Katie stood alone in Training Room 9, both blades in hand, staring at the practice dummy across from her. She had barely slept. Her mind kept running through possibilities, strategies, and increasingly desperate ideas. She activated both blades and tried the basic strike pattern. Left blade forward, right blade guard. Then reverse. The movements felt wrong, disconnected. Her brain screamed at her to choose one hand and commit to a dot after an hour. Katie's arms ached and her head pounded. She had made no progress. Ryan arrived at 06:00 with breakfast and sympathy. You look terrible. I feel worse. Katie deactivated the blades and accepted the nutrition bar he offered. I cannot get my brain to process both weapons independently. Every time I focus on one, the other becomes clumsy. Maybe you are thinking about it wrong, Ryan suggested. You are trying to control each blade separately, right? That is what dual wielding is. Is it though? Ryan picked up one of the blades. When Velther demonstrated, did it look like he was controlling 4 separate weapons, or did it look like one unified combat style? Katie thought back to the demonstration. Ryan was right. Velther had not fought like he had 4 separate weapons. He had fought like he had one weapon system with 4 parts. Show me your best single blade form, Ryan said. Katie took one blade and moved through a standard attack sequence. Strike, parry, riposte, guard. Her body knew these movements. They felt natural. Now add the second blade, but do not try to make it do something different. Make it support what the first blade is already doing. Katie picked up the second blade. She started the same sequence with her right hand. When her right blade struck, she brought her left blade up to guard. When her right blade parried, her left blade created a secondary defensive angle. She was not trying to control two weapons. She was using her second weapon to make her first weapon better. Something clicked. The movements were not perfect, but they felt less wrong. Her brain was not trying to split its attention. It was expanding its existing combat pattern to include a second tool. Better, Ryan observed. Not good, but better. Katie trained for 6 more hours that day. By evening meal, she could barely lift her arms. Her neural fatigue was so severe that she had trouble forming words. Dr. Chun found her in the mess hall and pulled her aside. "You are pushing too hard," the doctor said firmly. "Neural adaptation takes time. If you damage your pathways through overtraining, you will never achieve what you want. I only have 7 days. Then you need to train smarter, not just harder." Dr. Chun pulled out her scanner and checked Katie's readings. "Your brain activity is scattered. You are forcing connections instead of allowing them to form naturally. Tonight, rest. Tomorrow, start fresh." Katie wanted to argue, but the doctor was right. She went to her quarters and slept for 10 hours straight. Day 2 started with a different approach. Katie spent the first hour not touching the blades at all. Instead, she researched. She accessed every record of Earth's historical dual-weapon combat she could find. She studied Miyamoto Musashi's Book of 5 Rings, reading his philosophy about using 2 swords. He had not treated them as 2 separate weapons. He called one the sun and one the moon, working together in harmony. She found records of Kali fighters from the Philippines. Their dual-stick techniques emphasize rhythm and flow. They trained by tapping sticks together in patterns until the movements became automatic. She discovered European sword and dagger techniques where the weapons had completely different roles. The sword was for power and reach. The dagger was for close defense and quick strikes. Different roles. That was the key. Katie returned to the training room with new understanding. She set her right blade, her dominant hand, to offensive mode with higher power output. She set her left blade to defensive mode with faster response time, but lower power. Now, when she fought, she was not trying to make both hands do the same thing. Her right hand delivered the killing blows. Her left hand kept her alive long enough to deliver them. The improvement was immediate and dramatic. By the end of day 2, Katie's efficiency had climbed to 42%. Still far from the required 75, but it was real progress. Ryan sparred with her that evening, his single blade against her 2. The first bout ended quickly with Ryan winning. But by the 5th bout, Katie managed to score a hit. Her left blade deflected Ryan's strike while her right blade slipped through his guard. "You are getting scary," Ryan said, breathing hard. "I had to actually work for that defense." Day 3 brought new problems. Katie's muscle development was uneven. Her right arm was stronger from years of single-blade training. Her left arm fatigued faster, which threw off her timing. She adjusted her training schedule. Morning sessions focused on building left arm strength with resistance exercises. Afternoon sessions worked on blade coordination. Evening sessions were pure sparring practice. Other cadets began to notice. Some started watching her training sessions. A small crowd gathered outside Training Room 9 during her evening practice. Katie tried to ignore them, but she could hear their comments. "She's wasting her time," one alien cadet said loud enough to be heard through the door. "Humans are stubborn," another replied. "They do not know when to quit." That comment made Katie smile despite her exhaustion. They were right. Humans were stubborn. It was one of their best qualities. Day 4 was the hardest. Katie hit a wall. Her efficiency had climbed to 51%, but then plateaued. No matter what she tried, she could not push higher. Her brain had adapted as much as it could through brute force. She needed something more. She sat in the training room at 0200 hours, too frustrated to sleep. Both blades lay on the floor beside her. She was running out of time. 3 days left, and she was still 24 percentage points short of her goal. The door chimed. Katie called permission to enter, expecting Ryan. Instead, Dr. Chun stepped inside. "Cannot sleep either?" The doctor asked. "How did you know I was here?" "I monitor your biosigns. You have been in this room for 19 hours today." Dr. Chun sat beside her. "You have reached a limit. Your conscious mind has adapted as much as it can. Now you need to let your unconscious mind take over." "I do not understand. When you fight with a single blade, do you think about every movement?" "No, my body just knows what to do." "Exactly. You need to reach that state with 2 blades. But you cannot force it. You need to stop trying so hard and let your instincts develop." Dr. Chun stood. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow, try something different." Katie slept, but her dreams were full of blades and combat forms. Day 5 began with Katie trying Dr. Chun's advice. Instead of drilling specific movements, she just fought. She set the training room to generate random combat scenarios and reacted without thinking. At first, it was a disaster. But slowly, over hours of practice, something changed. Her body began to move without her conscious input. Her left blade rose to block without her deciding to block. Her right blade struck openings she did not consciously see. Her efficiency climbed to 59%. Day 6 saw Katie training with an intensity that worried even Ryan. She barely ate. She only slept when her body literally shut down from exhaustion. Other human cadets brought her food and water between sessions. Some even offered encouragement. One cadet named Greg, who usually kept to himself, stopped by during evening practice. "My grandfather studied Kali back on Earth," he said. "He taught me a drill. Want to try it?" The drill involved tapping blades together in rhythmic patterns, first slow, then faster and faster until thought became impossible and only reflex remained. Katie practiced it for 3 hours, straight until her hands moved in perfect, synchronized rhythm. Efficiency, 67%. Day 7 arrived. Katie had one final training session before the test that evening. She was exhausted, sore, and running on pure determination. Her hands shook slightly from muscle fatigue. Her head ached from neural stress. Ryan found her in the training room at noon. "Katie, you need to stop and rest. The test is in 6 hours. You are going to burn out. I am 8 points short." "8 points, Ryan. I need every minute." "No, what you need is to trust yourself." Ryan took both blades from her hands and set them down. "You have trained harder than anyone I have ever seen. You have adapted techniques from across human history. You have built new neural pathways in less than a week. Now you need to rest and let your body remember what it has learned." Katie wanted to argue, but she was too tired. She let Ryan guide her back to their quarters. She showered, ate a proper meal, and actually rested. At 1800 hours, Katie walked toward the testing arena. Word had spread throughout the entire station. It seemed like every cadet, instructor, and off-duty personnel had gathered to watch. The observation gallery was packed. Katie entered the main floor and saw Velther waiting in the center. Commander Zix stood beside him, the station's commanding officer apparently interested enough to attend personally. "Cadet Morrison," Commander Zix said in his rumbling voice, "I understand you have been attempting the impossible this week." "Attempting, sir. Whether I have succeeded, we are about to find out." Velther gestured to the combat course that had been set up. It looked more complex than Katie had expected. Multiple levels, moving targets, holographic opponents, and defensive scenarios all blended together. "Standard evaluation protocol," Velther announced. The first section of the combat course lit up with targeting markers. 12 static targets appeared at various heights and distances, each one requiring precise blade contact to register a successful strike. This tested basic accuracy, and Control. Katie moved into position, both blades humming in her hands. She did not think. She just let her body move. Right blade snapped out, striking the first target dead center. Left blade followed a split second later, hitting the second target. Then both blades moved together, crossing to strike 2 targets simultaneously at different heights. The crowd in the observation gallery murmured. Katie ignored them. She flowed through the target sequence, her movements smooth and controlled. Her right blade handled the power strikes requiring full extension and force. Her left blade took the closer targets requiring quick precision. When 2 targets appeared side by side, both blades struck in perfect synchronization. The section ended. Velther's voice came through the arena speakers. Target accuracy, 68%. Adequate, but below requirement. Continue. Katie felt her heart sink slightly. She was already behind. But she pushed the worry aside and moved to Section 2. Section 2 activated defensive protocols. Training drones emerged from concealed panels in the walls, their weapons set to deliver stinging impacts if they landed hits. Katie needed to defend against multiple attackers, while maintaining position in a designated zone. 3 drones came at her from different angles. Katie's left blade rose automatically, creating a barrier of energy that deflected the first drone's attack. Her right blade swept across, batting away the second drone's strike. The third drone attacked low. Katie's body twisted, both blades crossing in an X pattern that caught the attack between them. More drones entered the arena. 5, then 7. Katie moved constantly now, her feet following patterns she had drilled into muscle memory. Her left blade became a shield, constantly in motion, creating defensive angles. Her right blade struck out between defenses, disabling drones with precise hits to their control cores. She found a rhythm. Block with the left, strike with the right. Deflect with both, spin and counter with the right. Guard high with the left, sweep low with the right. Her brain was not thinking in terms of 2 separate weapons anymore. She was thinking in terms of defense and offense, and each blade knew its role. A drone got through her guard and struck her shoulder. Katie grunted at the impact but kept moving. Another hit landed on her thigh. She was not perfect, but she was holding against 7 simultaneous attackers. The section ended. The drones retreated. Velther's voice returned. Defensive protocols, 79%. Above requirement. Current average, 73.5%. The crowd's murmuring grew louder. Katie was close. So close. But she still had one more section, and it was traditionally the hardest. Proceed to Section 3, Velther announced. Close quarters combat. Multiple holographic opponents. Adaptive I. Difficulty will scale based on performance. Katie moved to the designated starting zone. She rolled her shoulders, feeling the fatigue in her muscles. Her hands ached from gripping the blades. Her head throbbed from maintaining split focus for this long. But she was so close to her goal. The arena's holographic projectors activated. 3 opponents materialized, each armed with various melee weapons. They moved with realistic physics and combat intelligence. Katie had trained against these systems before with a single blade. They were challenging even then. The first opponent rushed her with a staff. Katie's left blade deflected the initial strike, while her right blade came up and over, striking the hologram's exposed shoulder. The opponent flickered and faded, registering as defeated. The other 2 attacked together, coordinating their strikes. This was the real test. Katie had to defend against multiple angles while finding opportunities to counter. Her left blade moved in tight defensive patterns, staying close to her body. Every time an opponent's weapon came close, her left blade was there to redirect it. Meanwhile, her right blade waited, coiled like a snake, ready to strike when openings appeared. An opponent attacked high. Katie's left blade rose to meet it. The opponent's partner attacked low. Katie's right blade swept down, not to block but to strike. She caught the second opponent's weapon arm, the training blade delivering a shock that registered as an incapacitating hit. One opponent remained. Then two more materialized to replace the fallen ones. Now she faced three again. The AI was adapting, maintaining pressure. Katie's breathing deepened. Sweat ran down her face. She could feel her muscles beginning to fail, but she could not stop now. Not when she was this close. The three opponents circled her, then attacked from three different angles simultaneously. This was it. The moment that defined everything. 3 attacks, 3 different vectors. No way to block them all with traditional single-blade technique. But Katie did not use traditional single-blade technique anymore. Her left blade swept wide in a horizontal arc, creating a barrier that forced 2 opponents to adjust their attacks. In that split second of hesitation, Katie's right blade thrust forward, striking the third opponent who had committed to his attack. He flickered and vanished. Katie immediately pivoted. Her left blade, still extended from the sweep, reversed direction and came back to guard. Her right blade followed through from the thrust into a rising slash that caught the second opponent. 2 down. The third opponent pressed the attack, recognizing Katie was tiring. Heavy strikes came fast and hard. Katie's left blade absorbed the impacts, each one jarring her arm. She was being driven backward. Then Katie did something she had practiced hundreds of times in the last 7 days. She stopped thinking of her blades as separate weapons and started thinking of them as a single integrated system. Her left blade caught the opponent's next strike and held it. Instead of trying to push back, Katie used her left blade as a pivot point. Her body spun around that lock point, and her right blade came around in a devastating arc that struck the opponent from the side where he was completely exposed. The hologram flickered and vanished. Immediately, 4 new opponents materialized. The AI was increasing difficulty. Katie's vision blurred slightly from exhaustion. Her left hand was cramping from maintaining the defensive grip. She did not know if she could continue much longer. The 4 opponents attacked in a coordinated pattern that would overwhelm most single-blade fighters. Katie met them with everything she had learned. She used her left blade to create a rotating defense, the weapon moving in continuous circles that redirected attacks away from her body. Her right blade struck between the rotations, finding gaps in the opponent's coordination. Strike, withdraw, guard, strike again. 1 opponent fell. Then another. Katie's movements were becoming sloppy. She took a hit to her arm. Another to her side. The pain registered dimly through her fatigue. 2 opponents left. They pressed hard, sensing her weakness. Katie's left blade moved slower now. Her right blade strikes lacked their earlier power. She was running on empty. 1 opponent lunged. Katie's left blade tried to parry but moved too slow. The attack would hit. But Katie's right blade was already moving, coming across her body in an unconventional angle. It intercepted the attack just inches from her chest. The jarring impact nearly knocked the blade from her grip, but she held on. Using the momentum from the block, Katie spun. Her right blade, still extended from the desperate parry, came around like a club and struck the opponent's head. He vanished. 1 left. Katie and the final holographic opponent circled each other. She could barely keep her blades up. Every muscle screamed. Her vision had narrowed to a tunnel. She could hear her heartbeat pounding in her ears, drowning out the crowd noise. The opponent attacked. Katie did not try anything fancy. She did exactly what she had trained for 7 days straight. Her left blade rose to guard. Her right blade struck through the opening the guard created. Simple, direct, effective. The final opponent flickered and vanished. The arena fell silent. Katie stood alone in the center, both blades still active, her body swaying slightly. She blinked, trying to clear her vision. Had she passed? Failed? She could not tell. Velder's voice cut through the silence. Combat sequence complete. Calculating efficiency. The seconds stretched out. Katie heard her own ragged breathing. She wanted to collapse, but she forced herself to remain standing. Final evaluation results, Velther announced. His voice carried a tone Katie could not quite identify. Target accuracy, 68%. Defensive protocols, 79%. Close quarters combat, 89%. Katie's brain struggled to do the math through the fog of exhaustion. Overall efficiency rating, 78.6%. The arena erupted. The crowd in the observation gallery was shouting, but Katie could not tell if it was approval or protest. Her ears were ringing. She had done it. 78%. 3 points above the required 70-5. Katie deactivated both blades. The sudden silence from the weapons seemed profound. She looked down at her hands. They were shaking uncontrollably. Her legs felt like water. Velther walked onto the arena floor, his forearms hanging loose at his sides. Commander Zix followed him. Katie tried to stand at attention, but her body would not cooperate. At ease, cadet, Commander Zix said. Before you fall over. Katie let herself relax slightly, though she kept her feet. Katie spent 2 days in medical bay recovering from what Dr. Chen called severe neural fatigue and muscular strain. The doctor had been both impressed and concerned by what Katie had put her body through. You pushed yourself to the absolute limit, Dr. Chen said while monitoring Katie's brain scans. Another few days of that intensity, and you might have caused permanent damage. But the neural pathway development is remarkable. Your brain has literally rewired itself in 1 week. On the 3rd day, Katie was cleared to return to light duty. She found 3 volunteer human cadets waiting outside her quarters when she arrived. Ryan stood with them, grinning. Meet your first students, Ryan said. This is Greg, Amanda, and Louise. They all want to learn dual wielding. Greg was the cadet who had taught Katie the Kali rhythm drill. Amanda was a tall woman from the European territories with a background in fencing. Louise was compact and quick, originally from South America, with experience in multiple martial arts. You really think you can teach this? Amanda asked. Her tone was not hostile, just honestly curious. I do not know, Katie admitted. But Commander Zix wants us to try. We start tomorrow. The next morning, Katie stood in Training Room 9 with her 3 students. Velther watched from the observation area, his presence both encouraging and intimidating. First, we need to understand what we are really doing, Katie began. She held up 2 training blades. This is not about making both hands work independently. That is what I tried at first, and it does not work. This is about creating one unified fighting system that happens to use 2 tools. She demonstrated the basic concept, showing how her right blade delivered power while her left blade created defensive opportunities. The 3 cadets watched closely. Now, we need to find out if your brains can adapt like mine did. Dr. Chun will scan each of you. Not everyone will have the neural plasticity needed. Over the next week, results began to show. Greg took to dual wielding quickly. His background in rhythm-based Kali gave him an advantage. Within 3 days, he was achieving 40% efficiency. Amanda struggled more. Her fencing background actually worked against her because she had trained for years to use one blade with perfect form. Her brain resisted the change. After 5 days, she could barely reach 25% efficiency. Louise surprised everyone. Despite having no previous dual weapon experience, His martial arts background had taught him to use hands and feet simultaneously in complex patterns. His brain adapted almost as quickly as Katie's. By the end of the first week, he was at 53% efficiency. Katie worked with each student individually, adapting her teaching to their specific challenges. She realized quickly that there was no single method that worked for everyone. Some people naturally think in unified systems, she explained to Velther during one of their regular progress meetings. Others have brains that insist on separating left and right side tasks. We cannot force the ones who separate to suddenly unify. So dual wielding is possible for humans, Velther said, but only for some humans. Exactly. I would estimate maybe 30 to 40% of humans could learn this effectively. Maybe less. Velther considered this. That is still significant. In a force of 1,000 human soldiers, 300 dual wielders would be formidable. Word of the training program spread beyond the academy. Other species began asking questions. Could their bilateral species also learn dual wielding? A few cadets from other two-armed species requested to try. The results were mixed but revealing. A Vulcan cadet achieved moderate success. 2 Sarn cadets failed completely. A Proximan cadet managed to reach basic proficiency. It was not about species. It was about individual neural structure and adaptability. Commander Zix called a formal meeting 6 weeks into the training program. Katie, Velther, Dr. Chun, and the station's senior combat instructors all attended. The evidence is clear, Zix said, reviewing the data on his display. Dual wielding is possible for bilateral species, but only for individuals with specific neural characteristics. The question now is whether we modify our combat doctrine to account for this. I recommend we do, Velther said. All eyes turned to him. Katie felt a surge of surprise. The instructor who had said bilateral dual wielding was impossible was now advocating for it. My reasoning is simple, Velther continued. For 300 years, I told students that something could not be done. This prevented anyone from seriously trying. How many talented individuals across multiple species gave up without attempting? Because I told them it was impossible. We cannot afford to let assumptions limit potential. I agree, Dr. Chun added. We should test incoming cadets for neural plasticity. Those who show promise should have the option to train in dual wielding, not as a requirement, but as a specialization path. Commander Zix nodded. I will recommend this to the Galactic Combat Council. Instructor Velther, you will need to develop a formal training curriculum. Cadet Morrison will assist me, Velther said. It was not a question. She understands the human application better than I do. Katie felt a thrill of pride and terror. Helping write official galactic combat doctrine was not something she had expected in her first year at the academy. Over the next 3 months, Katie worked closely with Velther to develop the curriculum. They identified key principles. First, assess neural plasticity through brain scans. Second, start with basic bilateral coordination exercises before introducing weapons. Third, teach the concept of unified weapon systems rather than independent control. Fourth, allow individual adaptation of technique rather than forcing rigid forms. Fifth, accept that not everyone will succeed, and that is acceptable. The curriculum was tested on a second group of volunteers. The success rate was approximately 35%, which matched Katie's initial estimate. Those who succeeded became some of the Academy's most unique fighters. Greg became the first human to achieve 80% efficiency with dual blades. Luis reached 77%. Even Amanda, who had struggled initially, eventually found a modified technique that worked for her, reaching 61%. The Galactic Combat Council approved a new doctrine. For the first time in recorded galactic history, bilateral species had official recognition as potential dual-wielders. Katie's final year at the academy was transformative. She graduated top of her class with a specialization in dual-blade combat. But more importantly, she was offered a position she never anticipated. Junior Combat Instructor, Commander Zick said, handing her the official assignment. You will be the first human to teach at this academy. Your focus will be on dual-wielding instruction and neural adaptation techniques. Katie looked at the assignment in her hands. A year ago, she had been a struggling cadet asking permission to attempt the impossible. Now she was being asked to teach it. I accept, sir. Her first class as an instructor included 15 cadets from 7 different species. All had been tested and shown promise for dual-wielding. They looked at her with a mixture of hope and skepticism. Katie stood before them with 2 training blades in hand. I know what you have been told, she began. You have been told that your species cannot do this, that your brain is not built for it, that you should not waste your time trying. She paused, meeting each cadet's eyes. A year ago, the most experienced combat instructor in the galaxy told me the same thing. He had 300 years of evidence supporting his position. He was not wrong to believe it, but he was wrong to think it could never change. Katie activated both blades. I am not going to lie to you. This will be harder than any training you have done before. Some of you will not succeed, and that does not make you failures. It just means your brain works differently. But for those of you who can do this, you are going to discover abilities you never knew you had. She moved through a demonstration sequence, her blades flowing in the patterns that had become second nature. The instructor said no species can dual-wield. I grabbed 2 blades without hesitation. Not because I knew I would succeed, but because I knew someone had to try. Now you get to be the ones who try next. In the observation area, Velther watched his former student teach her first class. His forearms were crossed, but his expression held something that had not been there a year ago. Humility, and perhaps a touch of pride. The Kryn instructor had spent 300 years teaching combat based on certainties. Katie Morrison had taught him in 7 days that certainty could be the enemy of progress. After the class, Katie found Velther waiting outside the training room. You teach well, he said simply. I had a good instructor, Katie replied. One who was willing to admit he might be wrong. That was the hardest lesson I have ever learned. Velther's eyes gleamed with something that might have been humor. A human taught me that lesson. There is irony in that. Why irony? Because humans are still newcomers to the galactic community. Many species see you as young and inexperienced. Yet you continue to show us that new perspectives have value. That assumptions must be challenged. That impossible is simply another word for not yet achieved. Katie thought about that. Is that a human trait? Or just the trait of anyone willing to question the rules? Perhaps both. Velther turned to leave, then paused. I have been asked to brief the Combat Council on our success with the dual-wielding program. I will tell them that the doctrine,